Hi, I'm Jennifer Carter, and thank you for joining me on a podcast for parents, teachers, and administrators. Today's conversation should be a good one, and I'm sure it's something on your mind. So let's get to it. Thank you so much, Joanne, for being here today with me. Joanne, you are a recent 2025 Distinguished Journalist Award honoree. So it's doubly a pleasure to have you speak with me today. And specifically today, we're going to talk about community. And we're going to talk about what you do in your organization, how it matches what we do in our organization. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into a conversation.
Okay, well, Jennifer, it's so great to kind of be here with you on the podcast. Like you said, my name is Joanne Griffith. I am the founder and CEO of Entitled. Entitled was launched in 2020. I can't believe, actually, the time of this recording, we are actually celebrating our 5th anniversary. And Entitled is very much about creating connection through content. I'm a journalist and media executive by trade, but the thing that really lights up my heart and fuels my soul is really helping organizations think about how they can connect and be an information source for the people that they serve, for the people that they are in community with. When I launched Entitled, actually, it really started out as a kind of conversation and coaching space for leaders. We were in the depths of the pandemic. We were all scattered to the wind. We were all running our newsrooms in our particular places in California and also around the country. And it became clear that people really needed a touchstone, a place that they could actually connect with others, complain a little bit, yes, but also talk about strategy and talk about, how do you lead a team when you are on Zoom, or how can you really think about how you're serving your communities in this, kind of once in a lifetime event. So that's really was kind of like the heart and soul of Entitled, was bringing people together through a common purpose of how are we serving our communities and how are we also kind of taking care of ourselves in that moment. Where it has morphed and changed over the last year is really focusing on organizations like Oaktree. We have seen, obviously, with what is happening in public media, just general shifts in the media landscape, the reliance on social media as a distribution platform, there is still room and a necessity, honestly, for people to have information with the daily touchstones that they have. So with Oaktree, you have literally hundreds of parents, teachers, children walking through your doors every single day. And so it's like, how do we make sure that those folks have information that is useful for them as they're raising their children, but also how they're living their lives and how they're making decisions. So that's really what we at Entitled do, is work with organizations as they think about how they can be part of the community through content.
I think what you said about community and connection and organizations taking what they do to leverage it to connect people for information. Here at Oaktree, we're a learning center, right? We do a lot of parent support and we provide childcare services. But what we're finding is that parents are getting information from TikTok or YouTube. And then when I ask the question, like, and what's the background of that person? Right? Oh, well, they have 1 million followers. So talk to me about trusted partners and trusted resources, because sometimes the default is to scroll and what catches our interest feels like a trusted partner when it actually is just something that's interesting. So tell me, how can people discern a good, valuable resource versus something that is just noise on the internet?
Yeah, it's always about kind of, we say in journalism all the time, kind of checking your sources. But the truth is, everyone doesn't have time to do that. You're a busy parent, you're a busy teacher, you're running children here and there, you're trying to cook food, you're trying to stay healthy, you don't have time to do that. But that's why having trusted information from places that you already trust the people becomes really important. People trust Oaktree because they're literally trusting Oaktree with their most precious possession, which is their children. And so using somewhere like an Oaktree, or a place of worship, or a healthcare center, or other places where people naturally gather and have to go on a regular basis, kind of builds in that trust. If you're trying to do it outside of that parameter, though, it's really looking at, okay, what is this person saying and why? Is it a sponsored post, for example? And there isn't anything wrong with these things, I should say that too. But a piece of information is very different if someone is sharing that information because they're making money from it, as opposed to sharing the information because they're like, hey, we want you to have these particular resources at hand so that you can make decisions about where your child might go to school, or thinking about how you might vote, for example, or staying up to date on kind of the latest immigration news and things like that. So it's always thinking about the intention of a news or information source. Is this something that's been done for money, or is this kind of really like, hey, I'm sharing this because it's part of the public good that's actually going to benefit you?
And I think I'll add on what we try to do is to find people who are in the actual community.
Yes.
And connect that community member with that community organization, because there's a shared context that I think sometimes is missing where on social media. The politics, for example, in San Bernardino, I like to say San Bernardino is a melting pot. You can have a same gendered couple with biracial children who have guns, who are anti-abortion, who are pro-environment, like every possible thing in one family and in one household. But when you take a combination like that and you put it in a different context, it means something different. So when you're dealing with community organizations that understands that is the complexity of the community, then the information advice is not this writ large kind of information. It's specific to that context. So my question for you is, how do people find places like Oaktree in their community where they will get the context that they're in?
You can, if you have a business, it's a really great way to find people that perhaps you may not ordinarily know, for example, but you really cannot beat face-to-face interaction. It's really hard to be rude to somebody who's literally looking you in the face. It's really hard to be disrespectful to somebody that you might bump into, at the grocery store or having dinner on the weekend. And so when you think about information sharing within that context and trust within that context, when it's local, it's also saying, hey, we all have skin in the game. We all live here. We're all experiencing, this same geographical area. We're seeing firsthand what some of the kind of the issues, the challenges, what some of the opportunities are. And so we're actually kind of starting from a level of understanding about where we are. And then when we bring our differences to the table, that's actually okay, because it's like, well, you go to school too, you go to the same grocery store too. Let me try and understand you a little bit more, rather than just making assumptions about who you are based on a post written somewhere that is many thousands of miles away from San Bernardino. So that piece, when we think about community information, is really important. In terms of thinking about, actually repeat the question for me. I want to make sure that I get that right.
I'm changing the question a little. How can we push people towards resources in their community, and where can they find them?
Yeah, it's like context is everything. And I always say, and Mrs. C, I'm sure you would think this too, referrals are everything. There is a reason why things like Angie's List do so well, or things like Yelp do so well, or even places like Pinterest do so well, because you've got other people saying, hey, I tried this, actually this really worked for me, you might want to kind of check it out as well. So even for myself, when I'm looking at a different story, for example, or I'm trying to figure out an editorial kind of campaign for an organization, I will spend a lot of time actually talking with others within the community. Where are they drawing their resources from? Where are they going for information? Who are the people that may not pop up on social media or on the internet, but they absolutely are kind of like the community grapevine who knows everybody and everything. So kind of start with the people that you know, start with your own network. If you're going into work, ask questions like, hey, where are you getting information from? Or if you have a particular interest in a particular topic. And again, because we're speaking on this podcast, for example, you know, if you're looking for more resources or information about children, where your child goes to school, ask there, because they are people who are already kind of steeped in the information that you want. And that's probably a really good place to start. And then the other part of that is it's already a trusted source. You know, to what we were saying before, when you're seeing somebody regularly, you're going to be really thoughtful. If someone's saying to you, oh, hey, like I'm looking for resources of, you know, how to deal with a child who's going through puberty, you are going to be really mindful of the information that you give out or the places that you point people to, because you might bump into that person again and you want them to have a good experience. So it's layering kind of information on trust, on community. And then if you're in the position of kind of being the information sharer, for example, you're then also going to spend time getting to know those sources, because you want to make sure that you're being responsible in what you're actually kind of sharing out and distributing, because now you're a distribution network. Eastsider here in Los Angeles, LA Taco, for example, you know, they're really kind of steeped in their particular communities, and they don't have huge followings in that kind of traditional media way, but the people who access them are going to them regularly because they are a trusted source that they know, like, they're doing stuff that's actually good for me and my community.
You know, and I love this trusted source idea, because here's the thing that I don't think that we do this enough, where we literally criticize and tell people don't do this because I think our society has shifted to like nice talk, you know, where we don't want to say, no, that's a bad idea, or we don't want to say that that's not good. But I think for our parents who are listening to this podcast, they need that truth telling, right? So what would you say, like, what's the downside of not doing this?
I mean, we started this conversation talking about the pandemic, and I think that is still such a great example of what happens with this and disinformation. You know, there was a point where people were taking all kinds of household remedies for COVID, which were actually dangerous. And that's not a criticism of the people who did it, but because their information source,
right,
to them, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm seeing this being reshared on social media. I'm seeing this being talked about on news outlets. Well, this must be true. This must be accurate. I'm going to try it. Instead of going to the Centers for Disease Control or going to their local kind of health department or speaking to their own doctor, for example. And so it's kind of, there are people whose jobs it is to actually kind of, and it's in their interest to share accurate information. But the downside of not having kind of trusted information sources could be impacts on your health. It could be impact on, you know, things that get built or that happen in your community because you didn't know about it, so you didn't vote, for example. You know, it can be those kind of very life-changing things that, if we're not properly informed, can not only have impact in the moment, but actually could have an impact for generations to come.
You know, to go back what you said, this is the time where people need to get out of their computer and off of their phones and actually go meet people, where you can build a relationship and you can sort of see, like, over time, I've interacted with you reliably. Okay, now I can trust you.
There's really something to be said about the impersonalness of it all. You know, when we think about the history of kind of news and how information was shared, it was always someone heard something and then they shared it with someone else, or they heard something and it was written down. What we're completely missing now is someone says something, it is blasted out literally to hundreds of thousands of people at the click of a button. And if there's anything wrong in there, it is very hard to scroll it back. And why I'm so genuinely excited about kind of local media and really honestly hyper local media is that, you know, you're going to get things wrong. That happens. But at least if you are within close proximity, it's like, actually, you know what, that thing I sent you, that's actually not right. This is actually the thing that you need. Or I think about organizations like Shoresides is a local media company in North Carolina. Their whole thing that they do is all about community connection. You know, they do this really cool thing. They have like community walks, and they just walk through neighborhoods, and they're kind of collecting people as they go along, and they're sharing news, information. They do a lot of stuff around kind of hurricane safety and the environment and things like that. But they're actually making friendships along the way. So when they're like, you know, a government agency is like, hey, actually, we need to share information about this particular thing. It's like, oh yeah, of course. And people trust it because they're just the people that kind of go out on their walks. Civic Lex in Lexington, Kentucky, they do something similar where I think they have an event almost every week, or maybe a couple of events a week, because for them, it's really about getting people together. So where there is kind of disagreement or discourse or anything like that, you're doing it face to face, but you're also building up that trust so that when a bigger thing happens, like a pandemic or a wildfire or something else that's really kind of seismic in the community, people like, oh, that's where I'm going to go to get that information because I know these people.
And my question is, how do we as an organization ensure that we're building that community? You know, we have these monthly events where we invite members from our community in to see what the kids have done, right? So if we, like this month is, we're doing a fiesta. So we're trying to find people who do traditional Mexican dance, and we're trying to find business owners who have services, and we're bringing them together, right? But I know Entitled is really good at giving some crib notes on how organizations can be better partners. So what is like a couple of pieces of advice to get people physically together, and especially diverse opinions of people together in the same space?
You know, long before you get people in the room, you actually have to listen to them. And so having an understanding of even who is in your community and what they do and what's important to them is really kind of like the foundation of it. When folks are doing fundraising, for example, there's a statistic that I heard that in order for someone to actually kind of give or donate money, they need to have had at least 7 touch points with you, at least like 7 meaningful touch points with you. And so if you think of that through the lens of kind of building a trusted community information source, that's a lot of touch points, you know? And so it's finding ways, it could be everything from a survey. You know, hey, we are thinking about doing more community events, or we are thinking about launching an information source. What are the things that are most interesting to you? What are the things that are most pressing for you? How could we help fill a gap for you? Another part is, who are the people that we should be talking to? You know, we all have our own networks. You know, there's the people that we talk to all the time or that we bump into all the time, but it can actually make our network actually quite small when it comes to thinking about a diversity of people and thoughts and opinions and experiences. And so making an effort to perhaps go to places within your area that you don't usually go to. You know, like I have a favorite thing that I will do if I'm traveling or if I'm like starting at a new newsroom. I'll go and sit in coffee shops. I will literally take a notepad and I will just go and sit in the coffee shop and be like, who's coming in? What are they talking about? If I see someone friendly, just opening a conversation with them and just kind of having that sense of like, this is what people are really talking about and being worried about is important. And also kind of getting yourself out of your comfort zone of where you would usually go, because the places that you usually go, you're always going to hear the same things. You start going somewhere different, and it could just be like you come out your house and you turn right. It's like, actually turn left and go to the coffee shop that's up that street as opposed to down that street. That can be something that's really important. I think too, having conversations with kind of city officials and civic leaders. Again, they kind of have maybe that more kind of like 30,000 foot view of a particular area, but they might be able to speak to it kind of from a policy standpoint, or from a, hey, actually, here are initiatives that are coming down the pipeline. Actually, we might need help sharing that information, or we might need help doing a survey so we can really make sure that this thing that we're bringing online is useful to the people that we're trying to serve. That actually then gets you into that place of thinking about partnerships.
Right.
You know, you've kind of now got that partnership or that collaboration connection. And then, you know, when you have events, and this is what you do at Oak Tree, inviting people actually in, like, just come, hang out, see what we do, you know, obviously in a way that is kind of appropriate and safe and all of those things, or opening your space up for community conversations, you know, like you have those facilities, you know, what better way to use it than to kind of say, hey, the community is having a conversation about immigration raids. Let's just kind of use that, because that has been something that's been front of mind for a lot of people. It's kind of like, well, we're going to open up our space, you know, get someone to sponsor some snacks and some waters, and everyone comes to that space. So when you're then thinking about, you know, enrollment, you know, and growing your enrollment, you now have all of these touch points with these people, everything from a survey to I'm going to go and sit in a coffee shop, to speaking to local officials, speaking to other educators. It's now not a big ask to kind of say, hey, we're launching our latest enrollment campaign. I'd love if you could share this within your network. You know, because it's like when we move to a new neighborhood, you know, we take over a pie to our neighbors, or we share our oranges, or kind of whatever it is. It's exactly the same thing. You know, we are showing ourselves to be friendly, so other people will be friendly to us.
Yeah, I think you do a great job at Entitled and coaching organizations like Oak Tree to really harness that relationship and really harness the things that we do already. So what are some other pointers and tips that you can share that organizations can do, or the other way, where families can say, hey, I come to the school all the time. How come we don't have a lit in it? Right. So what are some things that you would suggest where you can build those strong connections and ties to people in your community?
Yeah. I mean, you said a big one right there. Like, honestly, there's more that actually unites us and connects us than doesn't. You know, like I'm a true believer in that. Like, whether it's kids, whether it's care for our elderly, whether it's the environment, whether it's food security, whatever it is, it's just finding like what is the common ground that we can all put hands in the middle and be kind of like, okay, yeah, this is something
team,
right? Yeah, go team, and then you know, it's also looking at your team. They are getting information from different places and different parts of that San Bernardino community. And so it's like creating space and kind of looking at the talent that you have and being kind of like, hey, what are they experiencing that we might actually want to kind of float up and share in an information way that might actually benefit our, you know, our parents and other teachers there. So I always look at that. So that's part one. I think two, kind of looking at what you already have. You know, clients that I've talked to in the past, it can feel really overwhelming when it's kind of like, okay, I'm developing an information source, but that's not what we do. We don't have the right people. We don't have anything to share. And I always kind of sit with them and be like, well, talk to me about what did you do to let people know about the local fair? What did you do to, you know, when you're taking the kids on a trip? How are you telling the community about that? And then it will always be, oh yeah, we have a mission statement. Oh yeah, we have Parent Square. Oh yeah, we have a WhatsApp channel. where we're actually kind of messaging information to all of our folks and they're messaging us back. There's always things that you're already doing. And so it's then really kind of looking at what you're already doing and kind of getting into the nitty gritty of a little bit of kind of like, well, what is it that people are actually responding to? And then you kind of start from the place of strength. Like, what is the thing that people are responding to? And then build from that. My approach is always kind of start with what you have and start with what you know, and then figure out where the gaps are and then work towards filling those gaps, either through what you already do, but also partnership. Oh yeah, and partnership. Like, we are all stronger and none of us should try to do everything.
Right.
We all know what we're good at. Operate in that zone of genius and then make connections with others so that you're amplifying what they're doing, but also benefiting, kind of your own community with all of this information that they're getting from other places.
Yeah. I don't think people realize a community is a team. And if you can't run, pull somebody off the bench, you can run. If you can't connect, pull somebody off and the more you network and the more you're tapped in, the deeper the bench is, and, I asked about, like, what would you say is a pitfall? What would you say is the thing that's like, you're watching these communities build and it's giving you hope, like, we can figure this out, what do you see that's really inspiring you?
Civic Lex, I kind of come back to that, and Shoresides, I come back to that. Like, the work that they are doing in a very tangible way to bring communities together is so inspiring. And I'll send links so that you'll be able to kind of share those as well. It's actually very simple, go, like, literally walking your neighborhood. I mean, look, we all got to get our steps in anyway. So if you can do something that we're kind of saying, like, actually, that would be a great thing to do in partnership with a local health authority. If they're kind of trying to cut diabetes rates or just encourage people to move more, it tackles so many things. It's health in terms of, like, your physical moving your body, but it's also kind of combating things like loneliness, which, like that's kind of like the epidemic that nobody is talking about. Yeah. Like, people are lonely. So if you can be walking a neighborhood, saying hi to people and being kind of like, oh yeah, did you kind of hear about this particular program or this particular thing that's happening, you're kind of hitting all the birds with literally like half a stone and having fun. I think we don't talk about that enough too. I think the traditional news media can sometimes have a reputation, and I think sometimes rightly, of just being kind of heavy, serious. There's a lot of news avoidance right now because folks are just like,
too much.
It's too much, but people will always care about what's happening in their local community. And if you are a business, an organization, a nonprofit who's really kind of making the effort to be that information hub, yes, you're doing a great service to the community, but it's also something that's really good for your business, be it brand awareness or be it actual kind of tangible, bringing people through the door or sales through the door. Like, that has an impact on your businesses that are connected to communities will always do better, because when everything kind of hits the proverbial fan, your community is going to come out to support you.
Well, is there a last word that you want to share with us?
I think a last word I would share, and you had mentioned this and then I didn't actually kind of get to answering, community-based information is a two-way street, and it's just as important for the businesses, the nonprofits and the organizations to be that information hub. But it's also important that people who are consumers of that content feel that they can contribute to that content. And so if you are a parent or a teacher who's listening to this or watching this, and you're like, actually, I've got questions about this particular thing, or here is something that I see in my community that I'd love to share, where you find those trusted information sources, really kind of tap in and kind of be a part of it, be an active contributor to it. Our information gets stronger the more we are kind of drawing on real life, the more we are able to really bring together diverse thoughts, opinions, political views, all of those things. And, you know, the more we do, the more we get. The more you put in, the more you get out. So that's where I would stand. And I'm here. I'm happy to kind of talk to anyone about this stuff. As you can see, Mrs. C, I could talk about this stuff literally all day. But when we get our community-based information right, there kind of isn't anything that we can't do if we've got that bit locked in.
Well, speaking of talking to you, how do people reach you?
Yeah, so you can, and I know we'll have links and everything, but you can email me, Joanne at entitledleaders.com, Joanne at entitledleaders.com. Just put in the subject line, Mrs. C's podcast, and yeah, me or one of my team will reach out to you and we'll set up some time to chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you like what you heard, or even if you have some feedback, put a comment in our comment section. Be sure to like our page and make sure that you subscribe so that you can hear when the next video comes out. Thanks so much again for joining us.